Hey guys, so I've sat down and looked at this problem a little bit more, and I think I have come up with at least somewhat of a decent explanation as to how they got the answer that they got. Again, I've never seen an externality problem that quite looked like this, but this maybe now we have a little bit of explanation, and hopefully, if you happen to see something like this, you will have some experience with it. Maybe you won't see it at all. And after I go over this one, I've got a more, I guess, normal one on externalities that I'm going to go through that's a bit more like what we did in class, and what I hope is more like what you're going to see if you happen to run into this on the AP exam. So let's take a look at this one. I'm going to try to explain as best I can their response to this and what this ought to be. Now, one thing that I did kind of notice afterwards, and this was kind of an aha moment for me. I don't know if it really should be, but we're talking about, okay, we've got the marginal social cost with this curve right here. We have marginal private cost represented with this curve right here. Our marginal social benefit with this curve right there. And so this marginal revenue curve, get rid of that. That is also our marginal private benefit. So that kind of helped me a little bit when I remembered that. I don't know why. Maybe that's not going to be helpful, but that's just kind of one of the aha moments I had a little bit later. So anyway, is this externality positive or negative is the first part of that. And as we said, this is a negative externality. And it's a negative externality, and we need to explain that that's because the marginal social cost is above the marginal private cost. So the additional cost to society is greater than the cost to the individual firm. So now we're going to suppose, or we're going to use the labeling from the graph to identify the socially optimum output. Remember, socially optimum output is going to be where the marginal social benefit equals the marginal social cost. And that's going to be true in any situation of any externality. So that's going to be right there. Marginal social benefit equals the marginal social cost right there, which is at the quantity 2. Okay, and I think we got that far this past afternoon. So that's how we got that. So to produce the socially optimum output, indicate whether the government should tax or subsidize the firm. Now, there's the trick. Okay, there's where they kind of got us, because typically we think about negative externalities that requires a tax in order to, actually, I realize I just skipped something. But anyway, let me get back to that. So let me go back up a second. I'm sorry, I did that out of order. So using the labeling from the graph above, identify the unregulated firm's output. So the free market output, if there's no regulation. So that's going to be where the firm's marginal revenue, okay, MR equals MC. We want to find where MR equals MC in that case. Well, here's MR right there. This is MC right here. So MR equals MC at this spot right there. That's quantity 1, okay? So here is the socially optimal, and here is the free market quantity. Okay, now let me go back to where I was trying to get to too early and just a second ago. So to produce the socially optimal output, indicate whether the government should tax or subsidize the firm. So there's the trick, because we typically think negative externality, we got to tax to pull back on production. But notice here, the socially optimal quantity is higher than the free market one. Okay, so this was socially optimal, and that's higher than the free market. So we want them to produce more than the market is actually producing. That's the difference here with this being a monopoly as opposed to some other sort of market structure. So in this case, which is kind of weird, we don't think about it this way, they need to subsidize the firm. Okay, now calculate the dollar value of the needed per unit tax or subsidy. Okay, now this was tricky to me. The answer is $3. Okay, that is the answer that they have, and let me explain why. So the answer is $3 because if we look at the quantity 2, okay, that's where we want them to be. At a quantity of 2, the cost to the firm is $4. Okay, we want it, so to get them to break even, to get this $7, the difference there is 3. So it's the difference between these two places. So at quantity 2, okay, this quantity, this is what it costs them, okay, but we want to get them to where it is at least breaking them even. So that's where the 7 is. $7 would be breaking even. So there's the difference there of $3 for a subsidy. That's the best I can figure, and I don't have a much greater explanation than that. But it's a difference between their marginal revenue and their marginal the marginal benefit or marginal revenue and the marginal cost at that point. So you see, this is what they'd be. This may explain it better if you'll forgive me. So here is the cost to them is $7 at this quantity, $7. And they're only going to take in 4 of that. So the 3 is that missing income to make up for that. So that's where that 3 comes from. And I hope that makes some sense. I didn't explain that super well. But this is already like the third time I've tried to film this. So we're going to go with it. So now suppose that good X is produced in a perfectly competitive industry. Now we're going to answer. So a perfectly competitive industry. So now we are assuming that the marginal revenue is in this curve. So this is, Mr. Darp kind of a situation. So MR equals MC right here. So in a perfectly competitive situation, that would be our point. And so that means that the quantity is Q3. All right. So let's see. Equilibrium output in the absence of regulation is Q3. That is where MR equals MC. To produce the socially optimal output, remember that's Q2, indicate whether the government should tax or subsidize the firms in the industry. Well, there we're wanting them to pull back. We want them to produce less. So the answer there would be to tax. Okay, so that's why that would be to tax in that situation. And the amount of the tax is going to be $5 because they're here. We want to get them here. The difference right there is $5. So that is the answer to that. So that is a weird one, but I hope broken down that makes a little more sense, and perhaps that will not pop up. But if it does, you've seen it. Now let's take a look at one that is a bit more in line, and hopefully this will be a bit better, just basic review of the whole concept of externalities. So this one is about a medical vaccine. It's produced and sold in a perfectly competitive market, so it's not a monopoly. Assume that the medical vaccine generates a positive externality in consumption with the society. So we're going to draw a graph of the competitive market providing this medical vaccine, showing the equilibrium quantity labeled QC. That's free market, socially optimal related QS, and then we're going to show the deadweight loss. Okay, let's do at least that much. I'm going to put it right here. I've got my price and my quantity. This is a positive externality, so that means that I have my marginal private benefit, but really what the externality means is that demand curve showing the marginal private benefit is kind of in the wrong place. So I have marginal social benefit, the extra benefit to society, which should sit above that. And then I'll have my supply curve, which is the marginal private cost like this. So unregulated, the free market is going to produce where the marginal private benefit equals the marginal private cost. So that's going to be right there. That's going to be, they asked me to label that QC. Sometimes I might, if I wasn't told to do so, I'd probably label that, QFM for Q free market without any kind of regulation. Okay, but the socially optimal quantity is where the marginal private cost equals the marginal social benefit. So that's going to be right there. So that's going to be QS and PS, like so. Okay, so that's what that graph ought to look like. Now, the area of deadweight loss. So the deadweight loss, the way that I like to remember to get that is I start where I am in the free market. I move to where I want to be and then finish the triangle. That's the easiest way for me to do it and remember how it works. So I start where the free market is. I go to where I want to go, which is right there. And then I finish the triangle. So there is finishing the triangle. There's my deadweight loss. Okay. One policy action that would lead to the reduction of the socially optimal quantity of the vaccine, that's going to be a subsidy. That would cause them to increase their quantity. And would a binding price ceiling result in the production of the socially optimal quantity of vaccine? The answer would be no, because what a price ceiling is going to do is pull the price down. That would be doing something like that. Price ceiling, which would not encourage them. That would actually be lowering the price. Not, we want to raise it in this case and get them to produce more. So the answer to that would be no. So I hope that is helpful in trying to explain that one that was kind of a bear for us. I might, if I get a chance, do the first one we did that was causing a problem. I might go back and look at that one as well, and hopefully that will be helpful to you also. So thanks guys for coming this afternoon. Please let me know if you have any questions, and best of luck on Thursday.